Welcome to Get Going with Kubernetes. I'll be showing you how to set up a Kubernetes cluster, and the first thing we'll do is install minikube. Afterwards, we'll install the command line client called Kubectl, which will help us access the Kubernetes cluster. So I'll start with installing minikube. Alright, so from the minikube website, we can just get the commands to install minikube. So this is it, and I'm on the Mac OS, I'm on the Mac computer, and my architecture. So to find out your architecture, you can just on the command line use the command arch, and I'm on ARM64, so I'll just select that. I need this stable release, and I'm going to be using Homebrew, so I can take this command brew install minikube. So this is going to install minikube onto my computer, and take note, there is a prerequisite for installing this minikube. So you need to have 2 CPUs or more, 2 GB of free memory, 20 GB of free disk space, internet connection of course, and the container manager. I have Docker installed on my computer, so I'm all set. So minikube is done installing. Now you can verify that, okay, you can verify that by typing minikube version, and it shows that I'm running minikube version 1.24. Alright, I'll just clear my screen. So the next thing is installing Kubectl. Alright, and that website is there. So I'm on the Mac OS, I'll select that. Alright, and I want to use Homebrew, so I'll just run this command brew install Kubectl. Now minikube comes with its own Kubectl client. However, I prefer to use this Kubectl client itself. So I have that all set up, and you can verify that it's properly installed by doing Kubectl. I run this command Kubectl version, and it shows me that I have Kubectl client version 1.23, minor version 23, major version 1, and the server version as well is 1.22, as you can see here. So what that means is that I have a Kubernetes cluster currently running on my computer. I actually did that before this tutorial. I started my minikube, but if you're just installing minikube for the first time, you will need to run this command minikube start. So this will start up a cluster. Now if I run Kubectl version, when you do that, you get both the server version and the client version. So if I stop minikube, you see the difference. Yep, so that stopped. Then when I run Kubectl version, now it shows me just the client version, but it cannot connect to any cluster yet, any Kubernetes cluster. So that's what you get if you don't start your cluster, create your cluster with minikube. So I'll just go ahead and start that again. So whilst that is pulling, so I have minikube installed, I have Kubectl also installed. Restarting Docker container. Alright, that is all good. So I'll just run the command again, kubectl version. Yep, we're all fine. Now, the next thing is to talk about kubectl skew policy. So when you're installing Kubernetes and kubectl client too, it's recommended that the minor version, all right, shouldn't be more than a difference of 1 between both the server and the client. Now, what do I mean? When you run kubectl version, it shows you the client version as well as the server version. The minor version for the client is 23 and the server version is 22. So it's recommended that the difference between the minor version of both server and the client shouldn't be more than 1, basically. All right, because of compatibility issues. So we're all fine. That's the kubectl skew policy. So this is all good. Now we'll just be trying out some basic commands, kubectl commands. So I have a cluster running. How do I check that cluster? How do I see that? So I can run this kubectl cluster info command. So I just do kubectl cluster info, and that shows me that my kubectl is running on this address, which is localhost, and on this port 62877, and core DNS is also running on localhost. So that's one of the first commands that you'd want to check. We've also tried kubectl version. Now when we do kubectl version, it shows us both the client as well as the server version, but we can retrieve just the client version by passing this flag, client flag, and that shows us just the client version. All right, so I'll just clear my screen here, and we can now go into some more commands. So I'll run kubectl get nodes, and that shows me the nodes that I have currently. The name of the node is minikube, which is my computer, my local computer, and it shows me the status of that node, which is ready. And as you can see here, this is the version of Kubernetes server. You can also get pods and namespaces. So I'll just do kubectl get pods. I do not have any pods in my default namespace. I can do kubectl get namespace, and it shows me 4 namespaces that are currently on my cluster. Now we'll be looking at something else. Where is this last command here that says kubectl get pods, then there's a flag that passes the namespace. So I can just, for instance, try kubectl get pods in the kube system namespace. All right, so we have several pods running in the kubectl namespace. In other words, if we do not append this flag and specify the namespace, it uses the default namespace. As we saw earlier, this was using the default namespace. All right, so normally you wouldn't want to type kubectl every time. All right, for me, I do not fancy typing it in full all the time, so you could just create an alias like this. So I have already gone ahead to do that. So when I do this, for instance, get pods, you'll see that my alias is kubectl, k is kubectl. Now the Kubernetes components. So minikube is not recommended for production instances, right? So when you want to install Kubernetes and you want to use that in a production grade environment, minikube is not the recommended distribution. All right, however, minikube is fine for development, for tests, and you just want to try out some concepts that you're or you're learning Kubernetes, so minikube is a great choice for that. So minikube doesn't have all of the components that you'd have in a production grade distribution. For instance, if you're going to be deploying Kubernetes on the cloud, you'd be talking about the cloud controller manager. All right, however, minikube doesn't need that, but that's not the reason why minikube is not recommended. The reason why minikube is not recommended is because it was purposefully built for learning. It was built for testing, for development, not for production instances. So we can look at the components that are in the minikube cluster. All right, we should find the API server. All right, we should find the etcd store. We should find the scheduler. We should see things like the kube proxy, and let's just have a look at that. So remember the command to get namespaces. The kube system namespace holds the pods, the components, the Kubernetes components, all right, that makes Kubernetes work actually. So I'll just do k get pods in the namespace kube system. All right, so we have the etcd store, we have the API server, we have the controller manager, we have kube proxy, we have kube scheduler. So these are the components in our Kubernetes cluster, minikube cluster. I hope this was very helpful. Thank you.